It's okay, he got it wrong. We're the best chapter, but it's fine. Period. I'm just kidding. Okay. So, personal disclaimer, like they said this is sensitive, I'm gonna click it through, but if I mess up, I'll just keep going. Okay, so as you guys know, I'm Cheniqua Johnson, and I am from the New Leaders Council's Twin Cities chapter. I'm a 2022 alum, and I'm also a program officer at one of the largest community foundations in Minnesota. I've been there for a little over a year and a half, and in that time, I've had the privilege of reviewing 400 plus applications. I've worked with the board of directors to move $1.4 million in funding, and I'm also a Politico and like a proud Black woman. A couple of things that we're gonna talk today about is the secret sauce and recipe to grant writing. I'm gonna dive a little bit into grant writing and tell you hopefully what I think are some of the gems that you can take with you to have a stronger application and just to kind of maneuver this process. I will start by having a philanthropy disclaimer and saying that the historical institutionalized racism that exists in philanthropy cannot be covered in just 5 minutes. And then I'll also let you know that when you go to one foundation or one funder, it's just that, one funder. And if you take anything from today, just know, cater your grant applications like you cater your resumes. Okay, so here's my secret sauce. We're talking a little bit today about your pitch, your ask, your responses, your relationships, and your follow-ups. So let's cook. Okay, so starting with ingredient number 1, your pitch. This is where you get a chance to talk and tell your story. You're gonna talk about your missions, your visions, and your values, and tell individuals and this organization why you're best positioned to do this work, whether you're an individual, a nonprofit institution, explaining to them what makes you unique, and making sure that you know and pull in the reader to make them wanna read more. Which brings me to ingredient number 2, your ask. So this is the space where you get to be specific about what it is you actually need. In a lot of applications, they'll talk on, and then you don't actually know what they're asking for. So make it blunt and be specific. Tell them exactly how the grant is going to be used. As you go through, you'll wanna make sure that you spell out the connection between you and their grant guidelines. Be specific, as I said, but spell it out for them. Don't expect them to make that connection. As we get into the meat of your application, your responses, that's my 3rd ingredient for you. And this one is like usually where you spend the duration of your time as you talk to people by making the most of your space. Sometimes less is more, and in this case, find out how the grants are gonna be reviewed. I'm a program officer, but I don't make the final say. A lot of times I report to my board of directors. Sometimes it's a panel. Find that out and let that review process be your guide for how you tailor your application. Because ultimately, you want to make sure that you're showing the money and giving them a full synopsis of, hey, with or without this grant funding, it's still tangible. You want people to have correct and up-to-date finances, and if you have to hire someone or an analyst to work through your audits or a financial person to put together your budget or a grant writer even, it's worth the money. Do that, invest in those folks because they'll be able to show just how strong your application is for the funder. But ultimately, remember, humans are human. They want sufficient information efficiently. I always tell folks, if someone has 5 minutes to read through your application, are they able to get everything they need to get from that application in that short amount of time? Hopefully they are. Put the most important things first. They read a lot of applications. As you go through and identify and make those connections and talk through that space, just remember that if you have community partners or if you have anything that sets you apart, list those things too. We want to know about your process just as much as you want to know about ours. And ultimately, whether we ask it or not, talk about what this will do to make it successful and what that actually looks like for you. Spell out your short and long-term goals. So this is the most important part for me. It's ingredient number 4, your relationship. And I always talk about it being the sweet spot because it's something that you can't always build just with a paper. And you will be able to know that just by saying thank you, it goes a long way. Attending a community event, getting them familiar with what you do, all of those things matter because it has to be beyond the grant. But ultimately, don't overdo it. Don't harass them. I don't want to, no, but you going through this space, do keep them updated and connected over time because the more that they can relate to your story, the better that program officer or individuals behind reading your application can advocate for you and your organization. But get to know them all year round. Get connected. If they have community events, community listening sessions, anything like that, go to it, attend. And communicate to other folks too to let them know that you're applying for fundings, because word of mouth is a very underlies but yet still influential tool. So this brings me to ingredient number 5, your follow-up, which sometimes can be extra, but it's kind of like you're going to a restaurant, right? And before you pay, they give you your receipt. So just like you go to the foundations or the other funders, give them their receipt. If you've received a funding in the past, let them know how it went, even if they don't require reporting. A sweet email just kind of giving folks an update on how you're doing makes all the difference. And ultimately be patient, because the process can take, it's slow. Philanthropy can move slow, and sometimes it can be a little anxiety driven, but ultimately just know a thank you letter to the CEO or the donors itself. We receive those. We may not always respond in that way, but it does go a long way. So just to recap, here's the things of my secret sauce. It's your pitch, your ask, your relationships, your responses, and your follow-ups. Ultimately, your pitch, perfect it. Your responses and your answers, this is where you can, learn it, space it, seal the deal with your relationships. And ultimately, as you get going, just know that there's a long timeline between this, and it doesn't start and end with your grant applications. The things I want you to take with you as you go through this space is make it your own. There's no one size fits all to grant writing or grant applications. As I said before, tailor it. And when in doubt, ask. The number one thing that I see, and that can often be a pit to my stomach as a program officer, are minor details and minor errors that we could have fixed with a simple conversation. And in virtual means, Zoom is still effective. So just reach out, have that conversation before you submit and before the deadline so we can help you there. As always, philanthropy is a tool, it's a resource, and in many ways, it's repetitive and it's challenging. I know that, and so do your funders. So if you have any questions, feel free to scan the QR code and reach out if you haven't already. Thank you.